everyone, I'm Kadambari Sahu. I'm the head of design at Value Lab. Design Inspire is a web series of passionate, innovative, and young inspiring designers. The web series dive into their passion, inspiration, and what makes them go. It's an effort to understand how they are navigating their career path and how they are investing their creative energies. We believe hearing their bold moves and inspiring stories will ignite interest and inspire the next generation of budding designers across the globe. So let's go forward. Our today's guest is Gaurav Patekar. Gaurav is a designer and a maker working at the intersection of art, design, and technology. He's currently working as a research assistant at the MIT Media Lab, where he's a part of Future Sketches and Fluid Interfaces research groups. He had studied design and engineering prior to coming to MIT. His current work focuses on creating experiences and objects based on climate data in order to bring the issues of climate change to people's attention. Some of his interests are data visualization, kinetic sculpture, interaction design, digital fabrication, and craft practices. He believes that bringing together disparate approaches and skills can lead to novel and unusual outcomes. So, welcome to the show, Gaurav. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So, Gaurav, the format of the show is that the first we go with your presentation, where you would share with us anything that inspires you, motivates you, or your journey for that matter. And the second part of the show would be where I'll be asking you a lot of questions. So, all of these questions are actually compiled by the designers at User Experience Group at Value Labs. And we'll go forward from here to that then. So, over to you. Excited to see your presentation.
Yeah, so I'll start with my journey, like how uh, I came to where I am. And yeah, so I think I'll start with engineering. Like I went into mechanical engineering at an undergraduate level because I was really interested in making things, and that's something I had been doing so like since childhood. And based on like what I knew at that time, mechanical engineering was the best fit. And the 4 years of engineering were pretty interesting, but there were also like there were a lot of things that I realized that I did not know before, where engineering kind of fell short. One of those things was that I felt that engineering is not like the engineering the way it was taught at that time at the place I went to was not really about making things. It was more about like handling things, and I did not really want to do that. And so during like the end of my engineering, fortunately, I came across this place called NID, and they seem to have this thing called product design and new media design, and that seemed to make a lot of sense. So after like a year of um, working somewhere and trying to get into NID, I got into new media design in 2012, and so the 2 years of NID were really interesting, and I would not really go into that because I believe a lot of us know what that is like. But but what I want to talk about is the 2 years after that. So so I think like the 2 years of NID were like the most condensed amount of learning I have had in my life. Like it was just like a lot of things back to back, and I think I learned a lot, and I met a lot of people who I wouldn't otherwise. And but one of the issues that I had with NID was that uh, it was a bit too fast for my liking, and like I'm a pretty slow person, so I think I took like the 2 years after NID to just like uncompress and digest the 2 years. And also like when I came out of NID, I did not really know what is a wireframe. Like it's not really something I did at NID, and that's a good thing. Like I didn't really want to uh, do that at that point of time, but yeah. So what the point I'm trying to stress is that while I learned a lot at NID, there were a lot of skills that I did not have. And so I think the 2 years after that were a really good time to kind of gather all these skills and become a designer. So when I think about my design education, I think of it as these 4 years and not 2 years. And So these 2 years were really interesting. Like I was pretty clueless about like what is design and what do people do and what do I want to do, and I kind of ended up doing a lot of things. Like I did freelance visual design for United Nations, and I did some interaction design projects. I also uh, did some kinetic sculpture that I exhibited in Maker Fair and like some other places. And so I think that was like a good um, like a good learning period where I got to try a lot of things. And yeah, so at the end of those 2 years, I was kind of comfortable calling myself a designer. And at that point of time, I was already working as an interaction designer in a company, and uh, things were going pretty well. But I had like a sense of um, like something was lacking for me. Like I wanted to do something, but I was not able to do it. And I always had a vision of working as a new media designer, whatever that may mean. And so like I wanted to work on making interactive installations, or like I thought that my like day-to-day life would involve like using Arduinos and processing or things beyond that. And I was not really able to actually like turn that into reality at that point of time. So I was getting a little demotivated during that period. But so one of the really great things that happened during that period was that I had somehow like I had really good people around me that I formed really meaningful relationships with. And I think that was that was one of the most important things that happened during that point of time. So Kadambari being like one of those people, and like a couple of other people. And so I think it's really important to have a few people around you that you really relate with, and that understand you and your interest and what you're trying to do and what are your struggles. So that was a fortunate thing that happened during that point of time. And so many of those friendships were also collaborative partnerships where I ended up working on really interesting projects that I'm still very proud of. And these were like pretty big projects that were a lot of fun and a lot of headache at times. And but yeah, so that was again like a very good uh, period of time, like looking back. And yeah, so one of the like the main thing that I had in the like, if I could like say one thing for those 3 years, is the meaningful relationships that I formed, that I still value, and I think I will always value those relationships. And yeah, and during all this time, so Media Lab has like always been something that I've been looking at, and it always was something that I wanted to be part of. And I had applied a couple of times before I got in, and around like 2019 I applied uh, to this group called Poetic Justice. And it was more like a like I applied and I was not really um, like I didn't really know if like that's like a realistic possibility, or is it just like a waste of $60 once again. But yeah, so somehow it worked out, and I do want to like emphasize on uh, the role of chance in that selection, because Media Lab gets a lot of applications. Like for like 2 seats you have like 300 people applying, and it's not always about like how good you are, or how sometimes it just like there is a good role of chance that exists there. And yeah, so I consider myself very fortunate that it kind of worked out, and I was being able to go to MIT Media Lab. And yeah, so that's where I am right now, and I'll be finishing next year. And yeah, this again is a very again like similar to NID. like 2 years of very condensed things where there are like a lot of things flying around and I'm still trying to make sense of what is going on. And that, but then I have faith that it will like make sense like later on. Like it's not just 2 years, probably it will take me 3, 4, or 5 years to kind of really understand what is happening. And yeah, so after like 2021, I didn't really know what happens, or yeah, so that's the current timeline. And yeah, so I think so I, even though like this is like a linear timeline, like I don't feel it's linear. Like it's like there were like a lot of uh, going back and forth and a lot of times of confusion that I was pretty clueless, and then it made sense, and then I was again clueless, and I'm still like clueless about a lot of things, and one day it makes sense and it doesn't the next day. So so this is like there are a lot of struggles there, and I have picked up a lot of small things that have somehow worked out for me, and I thought I would like share those things for people who are kind of starting out in the field. So yes, I'll go to that. Like I have like 3 4 things that I would suggest. And so I want to use the word suggestion rather than like advice or guidelines, because that's not really what I can do. Like these are just something that have worked, and I would suggest doing those. But again, like it's different for everyone, and it might like maybe it might not work for you, maybe it will. Yeah, so I want to start with this. It's like a weird statement, but I've been hearing it in some of my conversations with people at the lab, and so there are like two sides of this statement, and it's important to acknowledge that making art is hard, and it applies to any creative endeavor. Like if you're starting your own project, if you're starting your company, or if you're trying to do something that you have not done before and you're not really sure. So that is a hard process, and it's hard in two ways. Like one is um, starting anything new or creating anything new is um, like firstly it takes a certain amount of courage and a certain amount of, for example, like I have like a lot of anxiety about making new things, and it's sometimes difficult to like push through that and be able to make something and put it out into the world. And yeah, so that's often something that gets lost in the narrative or the documentation. But yeah, so for people who are starting out, I just want to say that it is hard to do these things, and it's okay. Like it's not a bad thing, it's just how it is. And of course it's like 2020, so of course it's going to be hard. It's like we all know how things are. So yeah, so after this, yeah, I'll just go to the first point. So yeah, so I'm looking at like a wheel of like making, sharing, and learning, like a recursive, like a cyclical thing. And so so this is again something I did not learn at NID, because NID has a structure, or like any educational institute has a structure where you are making things because you have to, and because you want to, because you have the environment. But then after, like when you're on your own, when you're in the industry, or when you are paying rent and like taking care of electricity bills, it's difficult to have that mindset sometimes. And it's very important to have a habit of producing something. And it can be like, it can be a lot of, like it can be a lot of things. Like it doesn't have to be like the work you're doing right now, it could be also a side project that you're starting, or just a skill that you want to learn. But it's important to have a habit or develop like some sort of mechanism. So those could be that you sketch for like 5 minutes every day, and or you have like weekly or monthly challenges where you try to do something for 30 days. And yeah, so I'll just share like a couple of things that I have been doing. So this I started like during, I guess, the beginning of pandemic, where I found myself like being at home and with like a lot of time, and I wanted to do something. And I have been working with Zach Lieberman, who is one of my advisors, who is also the creator of Open Frameworks, and he he is like the master of daily creation. Like he started, I think in 2016 he started like posting one sketch every day, and then now he like, it's like his timeline is filled with these things that he creates, and you can really see like how he has progressed. Like yeah, so he has kind of perfected this art of making things every day, uh, and it's really beautiful to see like if like what he was making in 2016, and how like those really simple ideas have percolated into his work, and now they are really important part of what he does. And similarly, if you look at like what he's doing right now, like some of those things are part of his work, but some of those things are just iterations, and I'm sure like those will percolate into some of the future work. And that's very beautiful, because one of the powers of creating like this in like a systematic way is that you can just play with things, and you're not really trying to filter out things, or you're not really trying to curate. You're just starting with, you want to make something today, and that's, as long as you do that, that's good enough. So 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 I'm still practicing this. I'm not really able to do this every day right now, but yeah, it's good to have some sort of like a daily or a weekly thing. And and yes, I want to go to the next point related to that. So yeah, so over the summer, so this is like my first year in United States, and like during quarantine, I started taking a lot of walks because there was not much to do. And and it's the area that I live in right now in Massachusetts. It's very beautiful outside, and all the seasons that I'm experiencing are the first time I'm experiencing these in this weather. So it's really nice to see how the summer starts, or how the spring starts, or what fall is like. And so during my walks over like last few months, I have been coming across these like leaves and these seeds which I don't really see in India. And and they all have the way they move when there is wind, or the way they fall, is very beautiful and unique in a way that I have not seen before. And so during all these walks, I was looking at these things, and I wanted to do something with them, but I didn't really know what to do. And during that time, I happened to acquire a 3D printer, and I thought it might be interesting to just try to like put those two together and try to like replicate that moment in some way. And I started this without any agenda. Like I didn't really want it to be like a series or anything. But I thought it would be good to have like a weekly thing. So I put it on myself to like make one of these a week. And yeah, so I think I've been doing that for like the last couple of months, and I have around like 7 of these little things which don't make any sense, but like they're kind of whimsical. They are not all of them, like I don't even like all of them, which is nice, because if I was consciously like trying to create this, I would reject like a lot of these ideas on their own, and I would not end up making it. But through the process of making it, like it makes sense after making some of the things, it makes sense during making some of these things. And that's again a very beautiful thing that happens when you have these routines of daily or weekly making. Yeah. So now the second thing after making is to, so this is a quote by Austin Kleon, show your work. He also has a really good book about it. And so I look at showing your work in context of people like us who are in the in design field or in like who are makers. And so it's really important to be it's really I think, I mean, like I think it has really benefited me to do this thing where you try to uh, like you always try to apply for some competitions or some conferences or some open calls, or just like go to an event that is happening around you, go to the maker fair and just try to show what you're doing. And I think nowadays it's really good to like have things like Instagram where you have a very good community of people who are doing very similar things, and you can connect with people across the world. If you are doing, let's say, processing or open frameworks, you also have really good online communities that are extremely encouraging and helpful when you're doing something with that. And yeah, so I think sharing is like making and sharing is like a very important thing that has helped me a lot. And I'm, yeah. And yeah, so the third thing is to kind of find your tribe. So this is again a very important thing that I have learned over the last few years, where which is related to the sharing part, where it's not uh, it's sometimes it's scary to like share what you're making, because it can also uh, go in a bad direction, because it's kind of tricky. Like I fortunately have had people around me who have kind of understood what I was trying to do and helped me in that way. And now I'm like now at MIT Media Lab, there are really good people who really take the time to, like I sit with my advisors like every week, and they take time out to kind of understand what I'm trying to make and then help me out with that. And that's a really big privilege, or to have like friends who you can talk to and who understand um, what you're trying to share is a great privilege. And it's it doesn't happen automatically, but it requires some effort to kind of find the people who you want to share with. And it's worthwhile taking that effort to kind of find who are these people. Like, do you, for example, if you look at like conferences, maybe uh, maybe you might go to a UX conference and you might feel that, okay, so you really relate with what is happening here. Or you might go to a maker fair and then you will feel that, okay, I really understand these people. and and that's important, to take the time out to kind of see where you want to be. And yeah, so this is this circle of making, sharing, and learning has worked really well for me. And it's something that I'm constantly trying to practice. And I do believe that like if I can keep doing that, it's like it everything else can kind of fall in place. And yeah, so I mean, I would have really liked to know this like maybe 5 years back, when I had a lot of doubts about should I, like, why am I making a kinetic sculpture, or should I be doing this with my time? Does it make sense? Uh, it would have really helped to like know at that time that just like doing this is going to make sense and somehow like fit together later on. So that's something I would like to leave you with, that it'll somehow make sense. Like just try to like, yeah, just like make whatever you're making, even if it's like watercolors or processing uh, or coding or pottery, it's fine. Like it's good. And yeah, so the last thing I have kind of learned is in a way a very positive thing, but it can also be very scary, is that there are no rules. And I mean, of course there are rules, but there are no absolute rules. So this is something I have learned by like going from engineering to design and design to art and art to technology and all this mixing of things. Like I come across a lot of people who have very diverse backgrounds, and I think like in design field, like we learn a lot of these things which we think of as rules, and often they are like frameworks or guidelines which are very valid, but they are not valid in all cases. Like there are always cases where you can break the rules or you can disregard the rules, and it's good to, I find it helpful to kind of know that in the background that these are kind of structures that someone have built up, and there are always flaws in those. And especially when you're trying to mix multiple disciplines, which interaction design is mixing of like a lot of different disciplines, it's difficult. It's important to be able to have that skeptical mindset and to be able to see where the rules can be broken. Um, but it's also, yeah, it's also uh, a negative part of like this statement would be that it's very scary to know that there are no rules, because then how do you function? So part of the journey is also to find your own rules. Like you have to create your own framework, and that's something I'm still like struggling with, and I'm learning from like other people, like what are their frameworks. And it's, yeah, so I think that's kind of my task right now, to kind of make my own framework of some kind.
So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today, Gaurav. It's really, really profound, and there's a lot of wisdom involved in it. And I really think that a lot of people have gone through these things where they did not know how to start. First of all, even coming to design is something that people generally don't know that for reasons like that field exists. And that has been like one of the recurring themes that I've asked people that how did they come across design and how did it start for you? So, and those have been these answers where they did not know it was accident, it was chance, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, in a way, it all makes sense what you've just spoken to us. And now let's go forward with some of the questions that people have compiled for you. And the first question that I'll ask is the same one, and that is, when and how did you think of becoming a designer, and how did it start for you?
Yeah. So as I said, like so I went into mechanical engineering because I was already like into robotics and making things, whether it be like craft or, and then I thought at that point of time that mechanical engineers make things, and that made sense.
Mhm.
And during mechanical engineering, I did end up making things, but they were not really part of my academic education. They were mostly things that I was taking up on my own. And I think it's different in a place like MIT, where I see a lot of undergrads making things that go into space and like deep ocean. So, but yes, I that's kind of what I wanted at that point of time. And so I was towards the end of my engineering, I was kind of confused and looking at like what to do now. And I think almost by chance, I came across this video of a person from MIT Media Lab. Uh, it's this device called Sixth Sense, which was kind of going viral at that point of time, and everyone was watching it. And I was like, "What is this like? How do you do this thing? Like, what is? Are you an engineer? Are you like an artist? Or what are you? And so I kind of looked up this person, and I saw that they went to this place called IDC, which is like in Mumbai, where I was at that point of time. And but I didn't know like this existed. And then I saw that there's this thing called product design, and I was like, what is that? I Before that, like I was pretty ignorant. Like I came from a small town, and I went to engineering. And so yeah, I didn't really know there was this whole field of design that existed. And so somehow, like watching that video and looking up at this person, and then going into that rabbit hole of hyperlinks, I realized that there's this place called um, IDC in Mumbai, which has things called product design and interaction design. And I also came across this place called NID, and I was like, I don't really know, like this seemed a little sketchy. Like I don't really know anyone who goes there, or I've never heard of this place. Uh, but yeah, I was only able to find like two places in India at that point of time who offered product design. So I ended up applying to both. And so this was like one uh, like a fortunate accident that I came across these things. Another was that I during that time I ended up attending a workshop by again MIT Media Lab India initiative, where I met a person from NID, Nikhil Joshi, your batchmate. And so he almost like convinced me to not go to product design. He was like, what you're saying, like if you're like you want to make things and you want to make like devices and things, then you have to go to new media design. Like that's what they do. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, so I ended up applying to new media design. And yeah, so that's how I came to NID. And I was pretty clueless even like after coming to NID as to like what is new media design, and I still can't define. Like I don't know anyone knows how to describe it. But yeah, it was like a series of accidents that kind of led to that. And yeah, it's difficult to like there's I don't know how things are now, but yeah, there is not a lot of information about like design schools, and also because of the fact that there are so few design schools in India, and it's such a new field.
Mhm. So, with all this cluelessness that you have, now how do you define your practice?
So I always find like defining things a bit difficult because uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can like define it, but I can maybe describe it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and it's again like a reaction to where I am. So, for example, like when I went to NID, I felt like an engineer because that like compared to design, like I was more on the engineering side. And then when I come to MIT, which has like a lot of people who are into like hardcore science and engineering, then I feel more like a designer. And but I wouldn't like I'm still uncomfortable calling myself like an engineer or a designer.
Mhm.
So because it's like I don't think I like exactly fit into any of these categories. But yeah, so right now I if I describe like my practice, I'm just trying to make things. Like that's making things is something that has been consistent. And then some of those things can be thought of as design, some of those things can be thought of as engineering, some of those things hopefully will be thought of as art, and that's nice. But yeah, so one thing like I want to keep making things, and right now I think they will mostly fall within the domain of art and design, but will involve a lot of technology.
Mhm. So, would you call yourself, in that case, a maker?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are so then you confirm with the maker culture, right? Like where you make things and show things, and is this part of that culture as well, which is picking up, I think, really well.
Yeah, so maker culture is again like a pretty uh, broad
Mhm.
uh, field.
Mhm.
So I mean, I definitely like feel part of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so I consider making like the maker culture not as the like the current trend that you see, which is often like around like hackathons or uh, like these maker spaces. Like it's I mean, like we have a lot of craft practices that we have been doing, and some of those we learn as children, and that is also part of maker culture, not in like the meaning of the new word, but in like a broader sense. And if you look at uh, like I see in the West, like in schools, some of the people have learned how to do woodworking, and that's really great. Like I never learned that, and that is also maker culture. And if you're into embroidery or like stitching things, or if you crochet things at home, that's also maker culture. So any act of making things,
Mhm.
I would consider as part of maker culture. And sometimes it could also be like making cakes. That's also maker culture.
And that's great to hear. So you've also worked on like, so there's like repertoire things that you've worked on. You've tried a lot of things. And I also see that there's also this whole thing that you try a lot of different stuff, which is non-traditional. So is that by choice that you're trying to keep away from something which is quite traditional?
um, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a conscious choice. It's more of like where the interests go,
Mhm.
and yeah. So it's a combination of like what I find appealing and then what I find most valuable at that point of time.
Mhm.
So, for example, like I'm really interested in digital fabrication,
Mhm.
and I use that a lot in most of my work. Like I can't imagine the world without digital fabrication, and and part of it is just convenience. Like it's easier to have like a 3D printer than a, a full workshop that I can machine things in. And yeah, and I think it just uh, I think it's going to be like the default like in a few years.
Mhm.
And yes, but I also have like a lot of interest in traditional practices. And yeah, I mean, I don't really practice them like professionally, but yeah, it's not really something that like I would not look at it as like a choice between like going towards unconventional things or like new things versus like traditional practices.
So, in these different mediums that you've experimented, can you talk about some of your work in these different mediums?
uh, yeah so I think I can talk about like one of the projects called Data Jalebi Bot,
Mhm.
which I did in I think 2017 with two of my friends,
Mhm.
Karan Dudija and Devanshu Bhaumik.
Mhm.
And I think I really like it's one of my favorite projects because it kind of has a lot of interesting aspects, and the process of how the project came about is also interesting. So yeah, I think I'll just start with like a story about that. So so before like that project, I was kind of in that state of mind where I was confused, and uh, I was working as an interaction designer, but then I was like, I want to do something, and it's again like going back to like find your tribe point. Like it's difficult to like always do things on your own, and again by accident, like this person who put this thing on Facebook, Karan Dudeja, where he was like, I want to do like I want to participate in some event. I'm looking for collaborator and collaborators, and he put like he had put that thing on Facebook pretty seriously, but I kind of half jokingly responded to that, and then he reached out to me. And so I think he was also at home feeling similar things, where he wanted to do something and he wanted some people to work with, and I wanted the same thing. So we kind of started talking over phone. And so he was in Delhi at that point of time, and I was in Hyderabad. And I think we had like a lot of conversations which somehow like sometimes like went for like 2 hours a day, and that like very slowly, because we are, I think, both kind of slow in many ways. So and so we went through like a very very long process of like talking a lot and going towards like what we want to do. And we went through a lot of ideas and just like talked about random things and what makes sense, and somehow settled on making a data visualization using food. And and uh, yeah, so that was how the concept came about, through like 3 months of talking on the phone. And and um, and I think the process, like we kind of made it a bit too complex for our um, like skill set. It was like it just had like a lot of different aspects. So for example, it is a food printer, so it's like printing jalebis. So there's like jalebi batter is like pouring out of things, and there's like a frying pan with an induction stove, and the like a 3D printer on top of a hot frying pan. And there was like some pneumatics involved. And yeah, so it was pretty messy for for a project to be done remotely, because we're both in different cities. So that was like a lot of fun to like play around with all these things, and um, to put all these things together. And again, that's something I really uh, like and value, to be able to put like a part of cooking with a digital fabrication thing, with like data visualization and some design skills. And so what you can like create by mixing all these weird things is something that in a way is pretty unique, and something that is that maybe only that set of people can create. And that's again very beautiful for me to be able to have that.
How did you like take this part of creating jalebi? First of all, how did you arrive at starting with jalebi? And second thing is data visualization, right? So how did you think about this algorithm, or like how this jalebi would be transformed when you are fixing the data and part of it?
Yeah, so so the project was like we started it as something that we wanted to exhibit in this conference that was happening in India called Interact 17, which is a HCI conference, pretty famous, and it was happening in India for the first time. And I think they had I forgot the theme, but I think it was about like the traditions of India or culture of India. And so we were brainstorming about like around that a lot, like what does it mean for an HCI conference to happen in India, and what part of Indian culture do we want to highlight within that. And both me and Karan were pretty interested in data visualization as a field. Like I think he has worked a little in that. He had worked a bit in that in the past, and so it was kind of part of it was like reverse engineering, like trying to see like what the context is. Like it's a HCI conference. It's a design thing. It's about culture of India. So and then what are our interests? So our interests were data visualization and some other things. And so what could we do around that? So also one of the other things that kind of triggered the data visualization part was that these conferences get a lot of people from different disciplines, and how do we kind of show the diversity in the people? So what if we could make a data visualization of the people who are coming to the conferences? Because like you always go to these events and there are so many people who come from different fields, and it's kind of difficult to understand like what is happening. So so we thought of like making a data visualization for a person. So let's say you as a conference attendee, what what is your visualization? And the jalebi part was more of like a whimsical thing that we just said in like one of those calls, like what if you make a jalebi? Like that's like a strange thing to do. We also had a data arta concept, which we rejected, but it was like one of the almost like at the same level as data jalebi, which was like to make arta with data. And so so yeah, it was so the jalebi part came as like a whimsical idea that then made a lot of sense because it touched upon a lot of aspects of HCI community, and it just made sense at that time.
Okay. So my next question is more towards to do with your the like the way you are, which is introvert. And I've seen you that being introvert also means not being very vocal. So how do you make sure that you're heard?
Um, so I don't really make sure like every time like it's
Mhm.
uh, but I think what I have ended up doing is to like choose where I am.
Mhm.
So for example, like I can go to certain places where like my voice is not valued and or not heard. But fortunately, like, I have come across like I have ended up at places which do value my voice, and or like places that have structures that make sure that like just because you're an introvert, your voice is not heard. Like that doesn't happen. So I think MIT Media Lab has done that pretty well, where I don't feel like it's like being an introvert is a disadvantage in any way.
Mhm.
And that's not really a credit to me, but to the structures of the institute. And all I have done is like I have managed to like be here. And I think the same with other communities that I've been part of, like the friends I have, or the NID community, where NID is not really a community that like shuns away introvert voices. And yeah, and I think like sometimes, I mean, I think there are ways of like, even if you're an introvert, like making your voice heard is not that difficult. You just try to find what works for you. Uh, like to be heard, like sometimes speaking less is good.
Mhm.
Like it's not really like you don't always have to like speak more to be heard more. It's actually better to speak less sometimes. And and yeah, I think now like everything is virtual, and like in Zoom calls, it's a lot easier to like speak up than in a group full of like 20 people.
Um, some of your advice to people who are introverts are also not very conducive for networking and all. How do you've talked about sharing, but then how do you go about making those connections? Any advice for those people?
So I'm not really like good at networking. It's like I'm pretty bad. But what helps is that um, so I'm not really good at like going to an event and just like network with people without anything. Uh, but I'm pretty comfortable like talking about what I do,
Mhm.
and like sharing. Let's say there's a project, and I like let's say there's a project called Data Delivery Bot that I'm happy to like share with people and talk about it. And then among the people I talk to, like some of them will find that interesting, and that will be like a point of connect. And so I find that to be the easier route to connect rather than through words, where I can, for example, like I often post things on Instagram that don't really have a caption, but then that like sometimes people reach out to me, and that's nice because then like they're reaching out to me because of the work, and that's desirable for me. Similarly, like um, I would find it pretty intimidating to go to a networking event, but it's less intimidating to. I mean, it is still intimidating, but it is easier to like give like a presentation or a talk at that event, and then people will reach out to you if they find your work interesting. And so I kind of find that like trick of connecting over work. And I had like gone to one of these talks like almost 10 years back, where I think it was one of the professors from MIT, where he was uh, suggesting this, that like don't, I mean, I don't completely stand by this suggestion, but his suggestion was that like don't do small talk, like just start with what you're passionate about. And I think that works sometimes, but I don't like advise it. But I mean, it's something you could try out if.
So I take it that some of things is that sharing your work has really helped you connect with people who are interested in work and like-minded. As you talked about the tribe and like-minded people with whom you feel comfortable. Coming to work right now. So how is it working in MIT Media Labs right now? How are you working and what are you working on?
Yeah. So so I think I'm working on like a couple of different things. Again, so one of the things that I'm focusing on is data visualization, because I think that's something that I really enjoy. And I there's this artist called Georgia Lupi who has this idea of data humanism rather than, and so I think you could look up her data humanism framework. It's almost like a manifesto where she her approach of looking at data is very beautiful. Like she's like when you think of data or data visualization, we often think of like big data and these network diagrams which are like connecting 100 points to 100 different points. And her way of looking at data visualization is very um, like at your level or at how you're feeling or how you're thinking. And it's a very intimate way of looking at data visualization. And so that's kind of something I feel is very valuable and very needed right now. And so that's why I think I chose to work with data visualization. And so right now I'm focusing on two different things. One is to work with data that you collect from the human body. So one of the um, groups that I'm part of at Media Lab is fluid interfaces, where a lot of the work is about data from biosensors. It might be like EEG or electrodermal activity, and I'm trying to look at how to visualize that data in a way that is more human and less of analytics and um, more of intimate data that you can understand at a personal level. So that is one thing I'm trying that I'm interested in. And another thing is I'm for my thesis I'm looking at climate data, because I mean climate crisis, like I don't really need to talk about global warming and climate crisis. It is it's not a matter of like happening or not. It's like how bad is it and what can we do about it. And so there is again there is like a lot of data already in the scientific literature, but it's difficult to understand it and it's difficult to contextualize it. And even after understanding and contextualizing, it's difficult to use that in our lives. And some of it is also very dystopian. It's kind of like you often feel helpless looking at like those figures. And so so I'm looking at how the process of data visualization can be used to take that complex and messy data and try to make meaning out of that data that at an individual level you can consume. So I'm looking at data sculptures or uh, interactive data experiences that will allow you to experience climate data in an interesting way.
Almost these climate data sculptures or visualization that I've seen, like the first one that comes to your mind is that polar bear, right?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of disconnect that I see. So So have you found like anything where you find it intimately connected, or what are your strategies in terms of making sure that it is it's not scary, it's not dystopian as you talked about. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've been like reading about these approaches, and so there are, I think, two things. One is like if you look at the polar bear, it's like one piece of information which says that like things are bad or things are going to get bad, and then on the other extreme we have like a 600-page IPCC report talking about what is going to happen and like 1,500 different scenarios. And so I think if like if I get to know that like things are going to go bad, or like if everything is going to go underwater, like I don't really know what to do with that. And if you give me the report, I won't know what to do with that. So where is like a good point in the middle where the message is not just that everything is going to go bad, but like something that I can work with, something that I can understand and comprehend and possibly like share with others. So there is like a spot that I have to navigate where it makes sense. So that is, I think, one aspect of, yeah. So that is another value of data visualization where it ideally tries to find that place. The other uh, answer to your question is about like the dystopian messaging. So say a lot of the dialogue was about how everything is going to like everything is going to melt or burn, and uh, so and that was like the messaging for like last 10 years. And now some of the research is saying that that's not really working, because if you give that to people, they just feel helpless, and that doesn't result in like a good outcome. Like earlier the strategy was to like use fear to kind of like get people to change their behavior, but that's not working out. So there is another strategy that some research is suggesting of trying to highlight like good stories of restoration and how things are working, and that will give us more hope. Like there is a lot of climate despair, and if you look at like the wildfires in California right now, it's and like a lot of young people are choosing to not have kids because they think it's not like a good idea to bring a child. And so there is, so I think like maybe 20, like 10-20 years back, it was like people were not believe in climate change. Now we are at a place where we believe in it, but not in a hopeful place. So so one strategy could be to bring back hope and like show how we could like make some changes. So I'm still very new to this, and I'm still evaluating different things and trying to find my approach, which I don't know right now, like what exactly it will be.
Mhm. We'll wait for that and what you come out with, and because it's the need of the hour, I believe. Climate, this whole issues are really something that is now glaring in our eyes, and we can't really ignore it any further. But going now to something which is very hopeful, and that is what inspires you. I want to understand, like, what is it, things, movies, anything that inspires you.
Um, yeah, so I think it has also like changes with like time to time. So for example, during quarantine, uh, I think I had like a lot of time for myself to like for taking walks and observing things, and I'm in a place which is uh, very beautiful in many ways, and so that so nature is very inspiring in that sense, because yeah, there's just like a lot happening outside that is new for me and interesting for me, and it's also very comforting in many ways. And so I think nature is an important part right now. Like I have a lot of plants, and I really like having them and like taking care of them and growing them. And so and I see that, so that started like a while back, and I see like some of those ideas like percolating into what I'm thinking of. And I think like the whole thing of climate, like working with climate data, came from that interest in nature. So that's one big thing that inspires me. Others are, I think, one of the things is like looking at, like not looking at, but like coming across other people's work. Like I'm surrounded by a lot of people who are always working with things that I am not really going to be working with, but it's very interesting to see. Like people are working with AI and machine learning and communities and land art, and so that's always something inspiring to see what other people are doing. And also, like if I go to Instagram, I see a lot of creative people putting out these things every week, and that's also like one of the important inspiration that I have.
You did give us like some of the pointers and your suggestions about how young designers can chart the journey, or what they can do, that you suggest but not really recommend, because it's up to them to take care of that. But are there any like some of the suggestions that you would, or advice, or yeah, I'll just keep it to suggestions, that you would still give to people, young people, people who are just coming out of the college, apart from the ones that you already gave?
uh, I mean, more of like a general, like a generic suggestion would be to like not really worry too much about things, and that goes back into the making thing. Like it, um, yeah. I mean, maybe I would like reiterate the making part where um, it's important to like keep doing something and like trying different things. A lot of them will not make sense and they'll not work out. That's okay, but just like try something. And yeah, I think when you're, I think. Uh, So I see like some people who are just like out of college, kind of stressing a lot about like what to do and where their life is going, and it's good to do that, and uh, but it's also okay to like take your time, and like a year or two is pretty small amount of time. Like I know like when you're out of college, like 6 months feel like a lot of time, and I think as like the more time progresses, the smaller the years feel like. So so it's okay to like mm, just do something else or not do anything or take your time, or yeah, there is time. I mean, I know like a lot of people talk about how there is so less time, and I think, I mean, I'm not like old enough to say that that's not true, but I don't like, I think it's a very weird thing to like always think about like how time is running out. Like I think it's there is time. I mean, it- yeah.
So not to be that rabbit which runs with the time, huh? I think that's something that you would advise, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, especially now, like there are so many things happening. It's easy to feel like you have to always be on, like you have to always make sure that your time is used most efficiently, and there is value in that, but it's also okay if like that's not really something you want to do for a while or like sometime.
So, Gaurav, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and I think it will inspire a lot of people. And there's a lot of work that you've done that speaks volume, and that is how I think you've also been able to make so much, because you've always invested your time in making things, and a lot of work is exceptionally awesome. And owing to these work and the thoughts that you shared today, we would want to confer a token of love and appreciation on you, and that is we're conferring the title of Inspiring Young Designer. Thank you and speaking to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.